So I'm betting when I said my next video would be a Superman review, you weren't expecting this. Lately I've got a lot of time in my hands, and I recently read this book, and seeing as I am reviewing older versions of the character, I thought, hey, why not? I loved this book, so why not do a review on it, seeing as I've done 2 reviews on Batman graphic novels before, so why not jump over to Superman and review a Superman book? I gotta ask the question though, and I gotta point it out. Clark in this book looks significantly similar to Christopher Reeve's Superman. Is it just me, or does he look a lot like Christopher Reeve's Superman? Tell me he doesn't. Anyway, if you don't already know, this is a origin for the character of Clark Kent. There have been many books exploring the origin of said character. But this one focuses more on the in-between, everything in between what we essentially already know. Which is why if you're reading this book for the first time, you may notice a significant time jump from him being a much younger Clark Kent to being a fully grown man. That is a big chunk of time just completely unexplored. But, as I said, this is focusing on the stuff, this focuses on everything in between. So you could fill in that time gap with other Superboy storylines. For this book though, I really enjoyed the school drama. It was like they were telling Superman's origin story in the way of Spider-Man Homecoming. It's a coming-of-age story, and man does it do a good job of that. It shows him having to come to grips with his powers, and him, accidentally hurting one of his friends, and the way he described it was honestly gave me the shivers. It's like he accidentally broke one of his friend's arms, right? And when explaining this, he says he heard his friend's bone snap. When I read that, I was like, oh my god, it gave me the cringe. Because imagine having all these heightened senses, and then one of your friend's bones breaks, you hear it, and you're the one that did it. You'd feel pretty shit afterward. And I thought it perfectly illustrated why Clark doesn't really want to hurt anyone. Another thing that I loved with the school drama is the romance between him and Lana Lang. Now, I've known about Lana Lang for a while from the movies, right? But I never got a good look at her and their relationship together. I must say, I was rooting for Lana Lang in this book, more so than Lois, surprisingly. Every time she'd go to kiss Clark, his eyes would, his heat vision would turn on, which is essentially a signifying that he is getting turned on by her, right? It's funny when you think about it, but I never thought of his heat vision like that. Whenever he uses his heat vision, it's him tapping into emotions, like raw emotions, like excitement and anger. I never thought of his heat vision like that before. I thought it was just something he just, did, but it adds something to it. Because when he's using it, he's tapping into, deep stuff. Lex Luthor is also in Smallville, and it's not like him and Clark are best buddies or anything, but I did find it interesting seeing his upbringing, seeing how his father, Lionel Luthor, he was such a drunk, seeing how at such a young age, how Lex views Smallville in comparison to Metropolis, and also seeing how he'd react to, say, hearing his father just died. All of it was interesting stuff. But I honestly, while reading, was questioning myself, and I was wondering why did Lex and Clark need to meet at all? Because when they meet, it's not like they, as I said, they don't become best friends or anything. They don't become close. And I ask this because later down the line, when Clark goes to Metropolis and he meets up with Lex again, this gets referenced, them knowing each other from Smallville, but nothing ever gets done about it. They don't do anything with it. So it just made me wonder, would it have been better if Lex and Clark grew up in Smallville without ever seeing each other? And one day, when Clark goes to Metropolis, he hears all this horrible shit about this billionaire douchebag, right? And finds out that he grew up in the same town as him without even knowing it. How great would that have been? I think that would have been more interesting. But as I said, I did find Lex's time in Smallville interesting. It got me invested in the character, even though he's a ginormous dick. And you really do see how much of a dick he is. At this point in time in the story, Metropolis was not a happy place. So Lex was kind of feeding off of that. And he would go out to a crowd of people every morning to try to pick one person to change their life forever. And he'd come out with arms like this, and he'd fucking act like a god, or what he thinks of himself as above everyone. You know, we all know this. But, oh man. At one point, he makes them wait a few minutes past the curfew that he's supposed to go out there and do his thing. And I was like, man, you're a dick. But I got to understand the character a bit. Also, I kind of understand his hatred towards Superman. I mean, I know there are other stories delving into the relationship between Lex Luthor and Superman, but in this I thought it was well done, because before Superman, Lex was propping himself up as like Metropolis's savior, even though nothing was really getting done. And then when someone who is almost like a god comes in and takes all of that fame away, you can understand why someone with such a big ego would have a problem with that. But the book also introduces other villains like Parasite, Metallo, even General Lane, which I'm not entirely sure is a villain, but he's not a nice guy. Also, the book introduces other characters like Lois Lane, who's the daughter of General Lane, as we all know. Also Perry White. We all know these characters. And there was a great scene between Clark and Lois at a diner. I love that scene. But I gotta say, the best scene for me in the whole book was between Clark, or really Superman, and Jimmy Olsen. When they're both on a rooftop, Superman finds Jimmy on a rooftop, thinks he's going to jump off, and I was like, oh god, don't jump off. But they get into a discussion, and Jimmy says he's thinking about leaving Metropolis because it's not what he thought it was. And which is when we learned that Superman is thinking of doing the same thing. And I don't know how to explain it too well, but it was just such a great moment that invested me into not only Jimmy Olsen, but Superman, and really was the foundation and explained why they are such good friends. Some would argue, and it's true, Superman and Batman are best friends as well, but Superman can relate to Jimmy more than anyone else, which is why they're closer, I think, than anyone else. This book gave me something that I've been missing, I guess, from the live-action version of Superman. Christopher Reeve's Superman is very much like this, and other live-action iterations of the character are very much, in my opinion, like the comic books. But the recent Superman has just been missing that inspiration that this Superman in this book, and I'm pretty sure all the others, have got. There's this great scene between Superman, a mob of civilians, and like armed soldiers, right? And he's standing in the middle of them, trying to stop all the fighting, and he just says, you know what? Lex Luthor is definitely not your savior. I am not your savior. You guys are. You have the choice to change Metropolis. I'm paraphrasing, but, you know, that's the scene. There's more to it than that. I can't say I've read a lot of Batman books. I mean, my collection is not that big, but I've read more Batman books than Superman books. So I've been wanting to get more into Superman, which is why I bought this book and read it. And now I understand what Superman is about. I understand the character more than I ever could have if I was just watching the movies. Because all I've read so far is Superman Red Son and Superman Unchained. That's it. I haven't read books that really go into the core of who Superman is. Anyway, I would highly recommend this. Even if you don't read comic books, just give it a try. It's a really good read. So yeah, I guess that's it for my review for Superman Secret Origin. I will see you in my next video, whatever video that'll be.